All right, welcome to another very exciting session of the course Healthcare Entrepreneurship. Hope you all students are doing well. So, today we are going to switch gears from what we studied in last class. In the last few lectures, we have talked about the different tools for design and analysis of different hardware or based products, healthcare based products. So, we had kind of shifted from the ideation stage to the design space basically. So within that module we are going to talk about a very exciting topic today, which is on the visual design elements. So how do we not from a technical standpoint, but when we look at a particular design of a product or a logo, how do we specifically figure out whether this is an attractive design element or not a very attractive design element. So that is all about the visual design elements. So let's get started. All right. So the first two things which we would be covering during this lecture on visual design elements is the elements itself and the principles, right? So what is visual design? So visual design is typically about creating and making the general aesthetics of a product consistent, right? So we do not want a product which looks nice on one side and poor on the other side. Neither do we want products which have functionalization and different buttons and whatnot to look aesthetically displeasing. There are several products you may have looked at which either the shape is not good or the colors are not nice, and it just looks very displeasing to even work with. So that creates a very long term impression among the buyers or the customers, and it definitely makes it increasingly important for companies to focus on these aspects as well. It's not only the technicalities, but how does it visually look. So majority of the sources from which you can figure out or kind of decipher some of the visual design elements is from the Google, the Apple, Body Shop. These are some of the logos and the products which are there out there. Then the next one is Uber basically. So if you look at the Uber platform on your mobile, I'm sure many of you may have used it. So you would see it's a very visually appealing, very easy to use kind of framework, right? So it is very clear, it shows a nice map, so you kind of know where you are and where you want to go, and it clearly shows the different options which you have at your disposal. You can quickly click at those options and get to the right framework where maybe you need a simple kind of a vehicle or a complex hybrid kind of vehicle. So those kind of things can be decided, and then basically your trip is freezed and then you go for your trip. But some of the things to consider here is the how does the platform look as a whole. So if you look at this doesn't have too many colors, so you're specifically looking at a fairly black and white kind of background with some grayscaling, and then the prices are kind of in the blue. So that's a very clear highlight. If everything was in black, then it is difficult for a customer to decipher, but they've put the prices out there in blue so that it kind of stands out. The different settings in which you're trying to select, they are kind of highlighted or non-highlighted, and then you have a map in a different scale. So it's a clear demarcation of where the map is, where the different options are, and what the prices are, right? So this is nice and visually appealing. Let's take another example, which is from the Body Shop. So this is this vitamin E moisture cream. This is specifically built for all kinds of skin types. So if you look at the packaging here, you're looking at the top, which is usually a black cover, and then you have this nice pinkish kind of or purplish kind of a shade, which uh, has a few gradients. So you have the Body Shop, which is the name of the company, kind of given in the black. Then you have vitamin E, which is kind of highlighted here. So vitamin E specifically has the meaning, like, so whenever somebody looks at this particular product, their eyes are going to go towards that vitamin E, right? Then it comes as a moisture cream. So if you want to read further, and then it is suitable for all kinds of skin types. So that's kind of highlighted in a different segment, right? On under a background which is much more of a different color, which is much more on the high gradient of purple. right? And then you have few other engravings, like which is of a 50 ml on the left side, which basically tells how much this product is, but this is kind of in a much more thinner outline, right? Like that basically means that element from a visual standpoint doesn't have to draw too much of attention. If somebody is really interested to go over the entire cover and kind of look at it, they'll find that 50 ml. This 48H is another, this particular highlight. So typically, if you're seeing quite a few things in the same fonts and kind of without any color demarcation, they are not the most important things to read. The most important thing I can see here is the vitamin E, and for all skin types, this basically gives an idea. So this is also fairly visually appealing. I would think from a personal standpoint, it's a little cluttered from the bottom of the moisture cream and cream day Jour Hydrantry. Like, so that part is a little cluttered, but otherwise it looks fairly clean. The one of the cleanest looking products out there in the market is the Apple. So typically, if you're looking at an iPhone or Apple computer, which is an one of the iPads or the other Apple laptops, you will see a very clean Apple logo with a nice shade. That's it, right? Like, it very clearly defines what that product is. Doesn't have to put 5 different specs and other details, because it's kind of self-explanatory, and those specs are not important for majority of the buyers. That is another intention, right? So these kind of elements we have to also think about while designing our products. It's not only about the technicalities, we have to understand how visually appealing certain products are. Few products are very clean and everybody kind of knows what they stand for, and some of the brands can do it very well, but majority of the startup companies which we are working as a part of, will have to also think of some very clean outlines, which doesn't have too much of information, because that kind of distracts the customers. So let's go further. So let's talk about some of the key visual design elements, right? So the elements of the design refer to the basically the building blocks of any composition. So these kind of attributes are really important when we take a look at things, and we may, as an entrepreneur or a product developer, may kind of overlook these kind of aspects, but like once we start looking at our purchase decisions and taking a step back and contemplating on the same, we'll find out that many of our purchase decisions are based on how visually appealing a particular product looks into. So whenever we are in a shopping complex or we are in a pharmacy, very often than not, you'll pick a few things like which you may not really want, but you feel like this is worth using, or the logo or the title is pretty attractive, right? So these kind of things sometimes will have a visual appeal, and that kind of also demarcates between the different products which are there in the market. So again, coming back to the example of the thermometer, if you have 5 different thermometers and 2 or 3 of that like looks very ugly and kind of cheap quality, then usually you would want to stay away from it. If you have some plastics hanging out, the colors are extremely bright, like you have green or red, these kind of colors are kind of not very attractive to eyes or pleasing to the eyes, right? So sometimes you would stay away from this product. So in that context, it is sometimes important that when you are coming with your own product, it has to have the right visual elements. So let's take a look at these different elements. The first one is a line. So basically it could have one line or a set of lines, or it could have curved lines, and we'll take quite a few examples like of how this line thing is implemented. Then you have certain shapes. Sometimes you have certain shapes within your initial advertisement, or your initial platform where you're looking at from an app standpoint, the first screen share of the app. So these all aspects are where the visual elements become really important. So the packaging of your product typically, and as well as or how your product top looks like, does it have some kind of an imprint? And the second part is, if you have an app, how does the initial interface of the app look like? So you may have come across quite a few apps out there from several banks and other places, like which look very shabby. Similar with healthcare apps, we would see them in the first page and there is so much of information, the colors are not looking good, we would just refrain from using it, right? So in order to get that correct, the third part is the spacing. Spacing is also sometimes very, very important. Do you have spacing between sentences or words, or between two different shapes and whatnot? So these kind of spacings become really important. If you do not have spacing, it's very cluttered. That means you're trying to over market your product. Forms. So there are certain forms which could be attractive, to the user size, and the user can also quickly relate to what this particular product or service is, right? Third is the value. So value is kind of the range of which, like, in which you kind of emphasize that there are certain colors and certain aspects which you think is of real value. The last one, second last one, is the color. So whatever colors you select, typically the rule of thumb is, if you select a very, very bright color, it can be kind of pinching to the eyes. So you want to use some subtle colors to make sure your product interface or the product outline looks pretty good. The last one is texture. So textures are also sometimes very important. How we look at the so it could be visual, it could be a little bit with the touching aspect as well. So there are certain textures of the products, again coming back to the Apple products. The texture itself is very nice and fine, and it's a very clean finish, like you like the texture, right? And there are products where you will have crisscross and certain weird designs, like, and shapes which you may think, oh, this doesn't look very good, right? So these kind of things may sound very mundane, but this becomes increasingly important, and basically makes the foundation of UX UI design, which is user interface and user experience design, right? Which we are going to talk about in the upcoming lectures. So let's talk about the first visual design elements with the example. So some of the key examples of a line are typically geometric line. It could have a bunch of lines put together. It could have a simple circle. Whenever we say line, we basically means like a 1D or 2D kind of diagram. It could have a range of circles. It could be it could be a non-uniform line with a range of parallel lines and whatnot. So one of the key example is McDonald's, right? You may think of this as just an M, this is a letter, not really a line, but this is typically built out of a bunch of lines, right? So a simple symbol with kind of a nice subtle color, which makes somebody relate with the brand, right? So nowadays when we see this M, we know as a fact it is McDonald's because it has gotten very popular. But back in the day also, like if you have seen the movie around McDonald's or kind of looked at the history of it, they got really popular due to this logo. So this is one of their key USPs for their company, even sometimes more than what they sell, right? So this logo became increasingly important because it was extremely visually appealing and something which everybody could relate with. Another example is basically you're looking at some of the shapes here. So there could be so many shapes or overlay of different shapes, but you're looking at the logo of a simple shape, which is Airbnb, right? So this is another shape which we look at and we know as a fact what this product is. And this company hasn't been around for like 10 or 15 years, or so it's much more recent, like we could say last 10 years or something, like maximum 5 to 10 years. So within that time frame, how have they really branded themselves into a very nice looking logo? So whenever we look at this, we know as a fact what this company stands for, and we have a very pleasing kind of outlook on this logo. Let's look further. So some of the spacings are very, very important. So under spacing, there could be a ground negative space and there could be a figure positive shape like or space. So basically you have some of the items like which are within with a background like of a shaded background, or it could have a dark background. And there are aspects of the logo and the other design elements which are outside that particular background area. So one example here is FedEx. So FedEx, we all know, is basically a big shipping company. So uh, there are two aspects to it. One is Fed, and then you have EX, like, which is express, like, so both of them do not have any spacing in this particular case, but that's the idea which was kind of conveyed, that Fed and X kind of are put together. So express comes along with this particular Fed, so there is no spacing, it's a continuous kind of a setting. Another logo example is where you have some shapes and then you have certain amount of spacing. Let's look at form and volumes. So forms and volumes are typically different shapes which are placed either as a standalone or together, and there are so many other aspects. One very common example, we know this logo, this is not from Olympics or any other logo, this is from Audi, right? So the Audi car or any kind of Audi based symbol. So this is how the four circles look like, right? So typically these are volume based rings which are put together, and they're put in a way that they look very visually appealing. The next one is from a light and dark value kind of standpoint, where you have one part which is light, which is automatically highlighted, and the other part is kind of dark. So you first focus on the light and then the dark, and as a whole together you have a very clear demarcation into what these two elements are, right? So CN, we know as a fact, this is Cartoon Network, right? Like so this is another very visually appealing logo where they have put a very simple design. It's a box with a C which is in light or a white color, as well as N which is kind of standing out, right? The next one is color. So color is a very common example, is this particular logo of Pepsi, like, which is basically you have this red and the blue, right, in a certain shape and form, and just the colors are demarcating it. So then the next part is the texture. So sometimes you have products which have very strange textures which are not appealing, and certain products which have appealing thing. So here is an example. They are talking about some particular this network or a movie or this lost thing, basically, where they have different textures of the thing. So almost the color tone is very similar. So what you see is a difference in the texture which goes from one end to another, and then you see a visually appealing person and a few words there, right? So these are some of the visual elements which become really important when we talk about different products and their initial view of it, like when you look at those products. So typically you begin to notice how all of them are used in design everywhere around you. So basically these are some of the big companies which we took some examples of, like, but these kind of visual elements are available everywhere, like, even with several products we have discussed so far, and the healthcare products which you come across, they have all these specific visual design elements. So some examples are this MUI.com, Pioneer.com, and IITD.ac.in. Like take a look at how the platform looks like, right, for IIT Delhi, like how the different departments and centers are looking like, what is visually appealing. So let's switch from here into furthermore like elements, like, which are principles, basically visual design element principles or visual design principles. So the principles of design are usually set of cardinal rules and techniques for composing the various elements of the design, right? So one example is during a parade and at the close to the Rashtrapati Bhavan, there is a during either the Independence Day or the Republic Day, you have a certain order which is maintained. So that is basically maintaining by a set of principles, right? So there are various principles here, one of which is unity, second is hierarchy, third is scale, fourth is contrast, then balance, gestalt, and dominance. These are the different kinds of principles with which all the design elements are kind of put together, right? So let's take an example. So the first visual design principle is unity basically. So typically the learning outcome, you are seeing two boxes here. What is in the text is not very important here. What is of importance is just take a look, probably spend a few seconds looking at these two boxes and just try to figure out what could be the difference or which is much more visually appealing. So this could be a marketing pitch for our particular product. So this is for the next best healthcare product which we are trying to pitch for, and just look at how they look at. So what I see personally is in the first box we have the first sentence which is kind of placed a little bit off from the left margin, and then you have gain insight into this crucial product road mapping, which is all of a sudden like going haywire, like, right, it's really displaced on the towards the right side, and kind of either has a right alignment or it has really moved there with a bullet which is kind of coming from nowhere. And then when this sentence kind of overlays into the next line, the line kind of shifts towards the left, right. So this is a little weird way of like placing your sentences, and very often than not you will see these kind of things are overlooked, right, how a product is pitched or how things are given. So when somebody takes a look at this kind of a box, they feel like the approach of the particular company or the product which we are trying to pitch for is very, very casual, right. And that's an insight which is going to stay with them through their entire product journey. So even if you're trying to pitch for 100 things which are really good about this product, this initial impression of the pitch which had lines going here and there uh, gives them a feeling that you are not very excited or very thoughtful about your product, or meticulous about how your product is, and this gives a sense of that maybe your product is like not very accurate, and things like that come along into the mind. And while we are trying to understand this visual design elements and the principles, we are trying to delve better into the mind of the customers. We have been talking majorly about the customers and how they think, because at the end of the day, if any of those elements which turns them off could put them in that form that they do not want to purchase your product even though it's technically sound, right. So with this I would like to thank you. This is all for the session. Hopefully you have learned something. We'll see you next time for the next class, right. Thank you.